السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله.
إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستهديه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. إنه من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, O you who believe, have taqwa in Allah and fear Him as He should be feared, and die not except in a state of Islam. For today's khutbah, inshallah, the topic will be about one of the 6 pillars of Iman, one of the 6 integral pieces of the foundation of our faith, and that being the belief in al-qada wal-qadr. Now, a lot of times we tend to ask ourselves, what is qadr? Or a simple explanation that's often given to us is that qadr is fate or destiny or the predestination aspect of our lives. And in a sense, that's a general description and explanation of it. But it's important for us to go much deeper into the concept of qadr and to understand how it impacts us in our lives and how we should understand it so that we as Muslims can do our best, obviously, to pass the test of this dunya and to attain Allah's Jannah. Now, the very first thing we should keep in mind is that the concept of qadr refers to the fact that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written everything, has planned everything, and is in control of all that is around us. All the events in our lives, all the events that happen around the world and around the universe for that matter, they're all within the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're all under His control, and He has full knowledge of all these events that are happening. We have obviously the names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is Al-Alim, He's the all-knowing. And He is Al-Qadir, He is able to do anything. He is capable of doing whatever it is that you may conceive of. Now, a lot of the times we tend to ask, because this usually begs a question, especially for us younger folk. And I myself would say, I've asked myself this in the past, and I've thought about this, We usually tend to ask ourselves, if everything's planned, if everything's written, right? Why is it that we will be judged? Why is it that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish me for, say, any sins that I do? If it's all written, right? If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has planned it, if Allah has written it, if Allah has, ordained it to happen, so why should I be held accountable? Why am I to blame? And what I've came to the realization, and this is a rather bitter truth and a bitter pill to swallow, but I feel it's important that we understand, is that a lot of the times, for example, when I would think of this, have this kind of mindset and have these thoughts of, why should I be held accountable? At the end of the day, when you really boil it down to why we're really asking these questions to ourselves, is unfortunately sometimes we try to find, either consciously or subconsciously, we might not even notice we're doing this. but we tend to try and ask ourselves and find excuses in a sense to disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to do what we wish and act on our desires. Usually when you boil it down to it, sometimes we have those thoughts. We wanna justify, why can't I just do that? Like if I did this and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has planned it, why is it my fault? Why did He write, my life, these events of my life to happen this way? And one of the things that I wanna kind of highlight about this point, and what I would kind of think to myself, is that one, it's important to know one of the reasons why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala explained to us qadr in the first place. The point, one of the reasons that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions, لِكَيْ لَا تَأْسَوْا عَلَى مَا فَاتَكُمْ وَلَا تَفْرَحُوا بِمَا آتَاكُمْ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said in the Quran, one of the reasons that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He explains the concept of qadr to us is, one, so that we don't, feel sad or feel left out on the things we miss out in life. For example, you miss out on a certain job opportunity or a chance to attend a certain college, or make a lot of money, or get this shoe or this house or this car. All these things, these material things that we might miss out on. Maybe we might not have the family, or maybe our lives aren't going the way we intended them to go. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in this ayah, in the first part of this ayah, لا تأسوا, do not be sad, do not despair in what you miss, in the things that you miss. Basically, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has written them for us. He has planned that if you didn't get that car, if you didn't get that house, or go to this college, or go to that school, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has planned for that. That was what was in your khair. That was part of your qadr and your fate. And the flip side to this is kind of, to have a balance in that وَلَا تَفْرَحُوا بِمَا آتَاكُمْ, which is basically to remind us that in whatever good that we may have, which alhamdulillah, we should be thankful. We have good in this dunya, alhamdulillah, especially us in today's society, in the 21st century. We are very blessed in so many aspects. And Allah is reminding us here, when we have good things in our lives, when we have success, whether it be in school, in the workplace, whether you're playing a sport, whatever it may be, any success that you have, Allah is basically reminding you that at the end of the day, this was also planned by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you weren't the one who chose for this to happen. Yes, you were the one who was doing it. Like obviously your free will, you did what you needed to do and you did your part, but ultimately it happened by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He was the one that ordained it to happen. And one of the things that I try to tell myself and tell others as well is that when we think about the concept of qadr, because you still might fall into that habit of thinking about it, and certain things in this life, certain concepts, for a lot of the times what we refer to as ilm al-ghayb, or the knowledge of the unseen. There are particular concepts that us as humans, we are simply, they're above our pay grade. They're things that we will never understand and never be able to know. And that's okay, because at the end of the day, as humans, or any being in general, the only being that is all-knowing is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No being, no creature, no angel, no prophet knew every single thing in existence. So for us not to understand how, we understand that qadr exists, and that's a fact and reality. But in terms of how He binds, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala balances our free will with his qadr, that's Allahu a'lam. It's one of those things that's part of ilm al-ghayb that we will never know, and it's not an obligation for us to know. If Allah wanted us to know, if with His wisdom, Allah is al-Hakim, He is the most wise. If He wanted us to know and thought it would be of any benefit to us, then He would have explained this to us or allowed us to understand it. But this is one of those things that are ilm al-ghayb, and only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the full understanding of how He's able to do this. And it just kind of highlights the power of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and how He's able to do something that seems so, kind of complex and complicated to us. What Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us through the Quran and through the prophets and through the example of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is all that we need to pass this test of the dunya. For example, if you have a professor, sometimes a student might be asking for all these extra details. We tend to get caught up in certain things. Do I need to know this? Do I need to know this? Think about it. Usually they'll tell you, here's a study guide. This is what you need to know, right? I'm giving you what you need to pass this test, to pass this exam or trial or whatever it is that you're doing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He hasn't given us full knowledge of everything. That's not our purpose on this dunya. Our purpose, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's given us all that we need to pass this test of the dunya, to be able to obey Him and to stay away from the things He has told us to stay away from, and to effectively gain His pleasure and gain the reward of Jannah and Firdaus. And inshallah, you know, obviously we ask Allah to make us of those of the in the highest level of Jannah and Firdaus al-A'la. And now I would like to, you know, recall kind of an example that in a class, an Aqidah class that me and my friends take, the teacher was trying to demonstrate how we have free will. You know, for example, I myself, when I came today, I picked this outfit. I picked the pants, the shirt, and for whatever reason today, it took quite a while to pick the outfit. But you know, we have the. You might not think of it, but really deep down, we all know we're choosing to do what we're doing. Like I said, we kind of look for those excuses that if Allah planned this, so if I do it, technically it wasn't me. But at the end, really, like I said, it's a bitter truth and a bitter pill to swallow. But once we do, I promise you, it'll make your understanding of events in your life. It'll make it much more. It'll be much more beneficial for you to understand them in this way. And the experiment, it was a very quick, you know, activity that he had us do. He simply asked all of us to raise your hand, and some did, some didn't. You know, depending on, like I said, depending on whoever just kind of felt like it, right? And so what he was trying to explain with this, he told us after that you see how some people raised their hand and some people didn't. That some people, for whatever reason, whatever their will was, they wanted to raise their hand. They wanted to think, okay, I'll listen, I'll raise my hand. Others just, you know, they couldn't be bothered. They just didn't feel like it. Here, it was but at the end of the day, we made that decision. Some people chose to raise their hands, some people didn't. It's a very simple example, but it's one that shows that at the end of the day, deep down, we all have that intuitive sense of free will that we are choosing what we choose to do in our lives. And there are many examples of how, you know, we can understand qadar and you know how it impacts our lives and some of the wisdom we could take from it. For example, we have in the Treaty of Hudaybiyah with the Prophet and his companions. When they signed the treaty, one of the conditions was that they had to leave and they couldn't make Umrah that year. They've traveled months. You know, this isn't like I took a 10-hour flight, and I have to go back. No, they've traveled months and with awful conditions. And they were told they had to go back and make Umrah the next year. That was part of the conditions of the treaty. So and during this time, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He revealed the ayah, Inna fatahna laka fatham mubina. Basically, we've granted you a great victory. And the companions were confused as to how is this a great victory? We've just, you know, like we wanted to make Umrah. We can't make Umrah. They've told us to come back. And there were other conditions that weren't exactly favorable in the treaty. But the Prophet ﷺ, you know, by the wisdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you know, later on, as we'd see, during these times of peace, during the years of peace that the treaty offered, there was immense growth in Islam. The Muslims were relieved. They didn't have to worry about battling and fighting with the mushrikeen. So in this time, it was a great victory because it allowed so many people to become Muslim and Islam to spread to so many other areas, even outside of Arabia. That's how strong Islam was growing during these years of peace. And as for a personal example, you know, I just wanted to mention that in terms of qadr and how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala plans certain things in your life. For me, it was about freshman year. You know, I just finished freshman year, and during those years, you know, freshman year, 8th grade, and so on. Obviously, one of my favorite sports is soccer, and many people will know that. And I was playing on a team, but however, the age gap kind of like, you know, it capped out. And while I was, you know, once the summer hit, I wanted to play soccer. I still wanted to, you know, be on a team and play competitively. And my school didn't offer that. So I've been in Islamic school my entire life. So we really, you know, it became a real option to just go to a public school so I could play soccer on their high school team. And, you know, at the expense of, you know, the Islamic knowledge or the Islamic environment that I had in my Islamic school. And we were so close to actually making this a reality. For whatever reason, though, typical, you know, I guess you could attribute it to, obviously, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And in typical Arab fashion, we put things off. We didn't do the transfer, you know, the paperwork in time, and I didn't get my physical done. All these details that amounted to me not going to the public school. And while I was bummed out about this at first, I was like, you know, khalas, it's my time of playing soccer on a team, it's over. And then just a month after, in the month of September, my old coach, he emails me with an email of, you know, basically trials to another team, an even better team than the one I was on before. And once he emailed me this, I went to the trials, alhamdulillah, I made the team, and I was able to play soccer in high school without leaving the Islamic school and jeopardizing my relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it was one of the things I was worried about too. By going to a public school and being in that environment, I was worried it would stray me from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So ultimately, this is an example of the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how it, you know, how it materializes and how you see it in your life. I didn't think of it at the moment, just like the companions didn't think the Treaty of Hudaybiyah was a huge success. I didn't think of it at the moment, but later on, and for me, it wasn't even that long. It was just a few months. I quickly realized the wisdom and hikmah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how He basically allowed for me to still play soccer while also staying close to Him and ensuring that I had that strong relationship with Him. وأقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله ولكم. Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah al-Kareem. Amma ba'd. Now, before we end off, inshallah, I just wanted to end off with a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ. And I think it's very important in summing up kind of what we were talking about in terms of qadr and how we should understand it. He mentions how wondrous is the affair of the believer. Indeed, everything for him is good. When good befalls him, he is grateful, which is good for him. He's being grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's being rewarded for this. And when bad befalls him, when things don't go your way, and don't go the way you wanted them to, when bad things happen in your life, you are patient and you understand that this is from the qadr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is also good for you. So all in both ways, right? There are two ways you could kind of look at our things in our lives. Two main categories of things. One being when times are going well, we should be grateful. And two, when times aren't going too well, when we're going through difficulty and struggle, to be patient with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's plan. Two things that we have to make sure we keep in mind always throughout our lives. Almost every event in our life can fall in those two categories. And for us Muslims, alhamdulillah, we are so blessed, one, to be in the 21st century where we're not even tested with so many difficulties like those before us were. But we also have this blessing of making good of everything that happens in our life. If we get into a car accident, if we, la samahullah, we lose a loved one unexpectedly, all these things and all these events that happen in our lives, we tend to, we have that understanding of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, yes, if it's something bad, this is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's testing to see how I would react, and my patience will be rewarded. Me understanding that this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and me being patient, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward me in some way, shape, or form, either in this life or in the next, or both. And on the flip side, when things are going well, which is even a bigger test, we're very privileged, alhamdulillah. We have a lot of blessings and pleasures in this dunya. It's also a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's seeing how you're going to react. Are you going to thank him? Are you going to use the blessings that he gave you for good? Or are you going to use them to, for your own, are you going to use them in a way that gets you sins from them? And it's important to keep these two. And I felt like this hadith really emphasized how us as Muslims, our understanding of qadr allows us to make sense of all the complicated situations in our lives, all the things that the unexpected and the expected, the good and the bad. With this understanding and us internalizing the concept of qadr and being able to live our lives, understanding that what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has planned for us is the best of plans, it will allow us to not only get through our difficulties, but also enjoy our successes and be grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ultimately attain Allah's reward in Jannat al-Firdaus. And I ask Allah to plan for us as He is the best of planners. I ask Allah to be patient, to keep us patient during times of difficulty and keep us grateful during times of ease. Allahumma aghfir lana warhamna wa'afina wa'af anna wa tajawaz an sayyiatina. Allahumma inna nas'aluka ridaka wal jannah wa na'udhu bika min adhab al-qabr. Allahumma inna dhalamna anfusana wa in lam taghfir lana lanakuna min al-khasirin. Allahumma ij'alna min al-muhsinin wa min al-muttaqin wa min ibadika as-salihin. وصل اللهم وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم وأقم الصلاة.
الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله.